The creek was Emma Caldwell's sanctuary. It wound through her 5-acre plot like a silver thread, its gentle burble a constant companion through the seasons. On summer mornings, she'd sit on the weathered wooden bench her grandfather had built, watching dragonflies skim the water's surface and listening to the frogs' chorus. The creek wasn't just water, it was memory, history, life. Her family had owned this land in rural Georgia for 3 generations, and the creek, called Silver Run by her great-grandmother, was its heart. Emma, 38, was an environmental scientist by trade, though she'd scaled back her consulting work to raise her son Liam after her divorce. Their modest farmhouse, with its peeling paint and creaky porch, stood in stark contrast to the manicured mansions of Willow Crest Estates, the gated community that had sprouted up next door 5 years ago. The estates were a monument to wealth, million-dollar homes with pristine lawns, infinity pools, and 3-car garages. But Silver Run didn't care for property lines. It flowed from Emma's land into the HOA's domain, and that was where the trouble began. It started with a letter, slipped into her mailbox on a crisp October morning in 2024. The Willow Crest Estates Homeowners Association, led by Bradley Hargrove, had decided that Silver Run was a nuisance. The creek occasionally overflowed during heavy rains, leaving muddy patches on their golf course-perfect lawns. They proposed to improve it by turning it into a concrete drainage channel, a tidy, controlled solution that would, in their words, enhance property values and aesthetic appeal. Emma read the letter twice, her stomach twisting. Concrete? They wanted to bury her creek under a slab of gray death? She marched to the HOA's monthly meeting, held in the community clubhouse that gleamed with chandeliers and polished oak. Bradley Hargrove, a former real estate developer with a politician's smile, presided at the head of the table. He was in his early 50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored blazer, his silver hair swept back like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom. The other HOA members, doctors, lawyers, tech entrepreneurs, nodded along as he outlined the plan. "Ms. Caldwell," Bradley said, his voice dripping with condescension when she stood to speak. "We understand your attachment to the creek, but this is about progress. Flooding affects our residents' quality of life. A concrete channel will prevent damage and make the area more presentable." Emma gripped the edge of her chair. Silver Run isn't just a ditch. It's a living ecosystem, fish, plants, birds. Concreting it will disrupt groundwater flow, increase runoff, and violate state environmental laws. I've studied this. You can't just... We've consulted engineers, Bradley interrupted, waving a hand. It's perfectly legal. And frankly, your property's rustic charm doesn't align with our community's standards. The room tittered. Emma's face burned. She'd dealt with people like Bradley before, men who saw nature as an obstacle to their vision of order. She tried to explain the science, how the creek's natural banks absorbed water, how concrete would send runoff straight into their basements. But the HOA had already made up its mind. The vote was unanimous, and construction was set to begin in 2 weeks. Back home, Emma sat on her porch, the letter crumpled in her fist. Liam, her 16-year-old son, slouched in the rocking chair beside her, scrolling on his phone. His dark hair fell over his eyes, and his earbuds dangled around his neck. "They're idiots," he muttered. "Why don't you just sue them?" Emma sighed. "It's not that simple, Liam. Lawsuits cost money we don't have, and they've got lawyers on speed dial." "So what? You're just going to let them ruin the creek?" "No," she said, her jaw tightening. "I'm going to fight. I just need a plan." She spent the next week researching, digging into Georgia's environmental regulations, and reaching out to old colleagues. She found that altering a waterway like Silver Run required permits from the state's Environmental Protection Division, permits the HOA hadn't mentioned. She filed a complaint, but the bureaucracy moved like molasses. Meanwhile, the HOA sent her another letter, offering to buy her land for a generous sum, enough to pay off her mortgage and move somewhere more suitable. The implication was clear: sell or be forced out. Emma wasn't selling. This land was her roots, her refuge. But as the bulldozers rolled into Willow Crest, she felt a creeping dread. The creek was more than water, it was her fight, and she wasn't sure she could win. The concrete and the consequences. The construction began on a Monday, the roar of machinery drowning out the creek's song. Emma watched from her property line as workers tore into the earth, ripping out willows and cattails to make way for the concrete channel. She'd posted signs citing environmental laws, but the workers ignored them. and Bradley's smug presence on site made it clear he'd greased the right palms. By the end of the week, Silver Run was gone, replaced by a sterile gray trough that snaked through Willow Crest like a scar. Liam was furious. He'd grown up fishing in the creek, skipping stones across its surface. One night, he snuck out and spray-painted HOA sucks on the concrete. Emma grounded him, but secretly, she admired his defiance. The neighborhood kids, offspring of the HOA elite, taunted him at school, calling him Swamp Boy and mocking their shack. Liam's temper flared, and he got into a fistfight with a kid named Ethan, Bradley's son. The school suspended them both, and Bradley called Emma, his voice icy. "Control your son, Ms. Caldwell, or we'll press charges," he said. "And don't think your little signs will stop progress. The creek's done. Move on." Emma hung up, her hands shaking. She wasn't giving up, but the odds felt stacked against her. She reached out to Tom Wheeler, a retired hydrologist who lived a mile down the road. Tom, a grizzled man in his 70s with a passion for trout fishing, confirmed her fears. The concrete channel would disrupt the local aquifer, increase flooding risks, and destroy habitats. He offered to help her document the damage and file a stronger complaint with the state. As winter turned to spring, the first signs of trouble appeared. The concrete channel couldn't absorb water like the creek's natural banks had. During a moderate rain, water pooled in the HOA's lower lots, turning manicured lawns into muddy bogs. Residents grumbled, but Bradley spun it as a temporary issue, promising adjustments to the drainage system. Emma tried to warn them at another HOA meeting, presenting data on runoff and flood risks. But Bradley shut her down. "You're not a resident here," he said. "This isn't your concern." "It's my creek," Emma shot back. "And it's your homes that'll pay the price." The room went silent, but no one spoke up. Most residents were too invested in their property values to question Bradley's leadership. Only one person, a new resident named Sarah Nguyen, approached Emma afterward. Sarah, a young lawyer who'd moved to Willow Crest with her husband, seemed uneasy. "I didn't know about the creek," Sarah said. "I thought the HOA had permits. If what you're saying is true, this could be a problem." "It's a disaster waiting to happen," Emma replied. "Help me stop it." Sarah hesitated but promised to look into the HOA's paperwork. Emma felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. By summer, the cracks in Bradley's plan were undeniable. The concrete channel was too narrow, too steep, and poorly designed. During a heavy July rain, water overflowed, flooding basements and garages in Willow Crest. Residents posted angry rants on the neighborhood's online forum, but Bradley deflected, blaming unprecedented weather. He even had the gall to suggest Emma's property was somehow exacerbating the issue, claiming her unkempt land was clogging the channel with debris. Emma's financial situation was worsening. Her consulting work wasn't enough to cover the rising costs of fighting the HOA, and Liam's school fines added to the strain. She considered selling, but the thought of abandoning her land and the creek felt like betrayal. She and Tom kept gathering evidence, photographing the channel's failures and documenting dead fish and eroded soil downstream. Sarah, meanwhile, uncovered irregularities in the HOA's permit applications, hinting at forged documents. Then came the storm, the swamp, and the showdown. In late August 2025, a tropical storm barreled through Georgia, dumping 12 inches of rain in 2 days. Emma and Liam boarded up their farmhouse, but their land, elevated and naturally drained by the creek's original path, held firm. Willow Crest wasn't so lucky. The concrete channel, overwhelmed by the deluge, became a raging torrent, then a bottleneck. Water backed up, spilling over the banks and flooding the estates. Lawns turned to lakes, driveways to rivers. By the time the rain stopped, Willow Crest was a swamp, with water lapping at doorsteps and seeping into million-dollar foundations. Emma drove through the neighborhood, her heart pounding. Mercedes and Teslas sat half-submerged in driveways. Residents waded through knee-deep water, salvaging furniture. Bradley stood on his porch, shouting into his phone, his perfect hair plastered to his forehead. When he saw Emma, his face twisted. "This is your fault," he yelled, storming toward her. "Your land, your creek, it's ruining us." "My creek?" Emma laughed bitterly. "You buried it in concrete. You did this." The confrontation drew a crowd. Residents, soaked and furious, demanded answers. Bradley tried to spin it, but the evidence was ankle-deep around them. Sarah stepped forward, holding a folder of documents she'd dug up. The HOA never got state approval for the channel, she said, her voice steady. They bribed a local official to fast-track the project. I've got proof. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bradley's face paled. That's nonsense, he stammered, but the residents weren't listening. They'd lost trust in him, and their homes were paying the price. Emma saw her chance. The creek can be fixed, she said, addressing the crowd. Rip out the concrete, restore the natural banks, and the water will flow like it's supposed to. It'll cost less than repairing your homes every year. Some residents scoffed, but others nodded. They were tired of Bradley's promises. Sarah organized an emergency meeting, and Emma brought Tom to present a restoration plan. The numbers were stark. Restoring the creek would cost a fraction of the ongoing flood damage. The state, alerted by Emma's earlier complaints, launched an investigation into the HOA's actions, threatening fines and criminal charges. Bradley's empire crumbled. Residents voted him out and lawsuits piled up. Against him, the HOA and the contractor who'd botched the channel. Emma's land, once a target, became a rallying point. Volunteers, including some Willowcrest residents, joined her to clear debris and plan the creek's restoration. The restoration and the reckoning. By spring 2026, Silver Run was reborn. The concrete was gone, hauled away by a chastened contractor under state oversight. Native plants were replanted, and fish returned to the clear waters. Emma's land, once an eyesore to the HOA, became a community asset, with a small park where kids like Liam could fish and play. Sarah, now a close friend, helped Emma secure a grant to maintain the creek, easing her financial burdens. Bradley moved away, his reputation in tatters. Willowcrest slowly recovered, though some residents sold their homes at a loss. The new HOA board, led by Sarah, prioritized transparency and environmental responsibility. Emma's farmhouse, still creaky, but now surrounded by wildflowers, stood as a quiet rebuke to the greed that had nearly destroyed the creek. One evening, Emma sat on her grandfather's bench, Liam beside her. The creek sparkled under the setting sun, its burble louder than ever. "We did it," Liam said, tossing a pebble into the water. "Yeah," Emma replied, smiling. "We did." The swamp was gone, but the lesson remained. Nature fights back, and so do those who love it.